Hi, Rick. It's so nice to have you on the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing fine, fine, fine. And just like I mentioned earlier, thank you so very much for honoring the invite. It means a whole lot. Thank you, man. Thank you. Okay,
Yeah, you're
Rick.
welcome.
Yeah, okay, I am quite excited to have you on the show today for for some reasons, all right? Firstly, my interest in knowledge seeking. Because I believe in order to transition from a chaotic situation to that of a beautiful one, it takes the application of knowledge, quality information. And you see, Rick, ever since I discovered that light in the Hebrew also means knowledge and darkness means ignorance, I've been so keen to knowledge seeking because I believe any aspect of my life that I am ignorant of, then that aspect is actually dark, and I do not want to remain in
Mm,
the dark. So now I'm trying to, expand my insight. So that's one of the main reasons why I'm excited to have you on the show. Now the second one is for the sake of the listeners. Now I believe there are some things that Rick knows that some of my audience needs to hear you say these stuff, directly from your mouth, in order for them to get unstuck and experience transformation. I firmly believe that. And lastly, that is me again. You know, I am convinced that I'm definitely going to learn one or two things from your story, insights, and experiences. Okay, so right now, Rick, I want you to view us, and when I say us, I mean myself and the audience. I want you to view us as your student, and you are our teacher now. We want to learn from you. Okay, so for that reason, Rick, let's get started with your introduction, your journey. Talk to us how you got here. Then afterwards, I've gotten some beautiful questions for you. Okay, Rick, over
okay,
to you.
perfect. Thank you. Well, my life began years ago. This journey, I'm saying, began years ago with a simple prayer, and that prayer was for a wife, and that prayer included uh, a wife that was very attractive, physical in all of her appearances, but most importantly, she was going to help me become the man of God I needed to be. That was 38 years ago, Elijah. 38 years ago, I had made that prayer. 10 years into my marriage, I found myself in a dilemma. The very woman that God had brought into my life now hated me, hated God, hated the church, and she said, I quit. I'm done. Walking out the door with two small boys, uh, and our marriage was done. And I felt like a failure. I felt like I blew it. Now, to add complication to it is because I had an addiction to pornography, and it literally destroyed our marriage. We worked through it. 3.5 years later, we were able to conceive a little girl. That little girl, her name became Victoria, because we were victorious over our marriage and the navigation through the addictive cycle that pornography led us through. Fast forward now, years later, uh, one of those little boys grew up and at the age of 23 was murdered. And we had to navigate the
So
loss of our
sorry.
son. And oh, thank you. And in navigating the loss of our son, it was an experience in learning how to forgive. We are all taught that it's we are to be forgiving of the things that people do to us, similar to what Christ on the cross did when he was abused and ridiculed and cheated out of his life. And uh, the last things he said was, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. That's forgiving the unforgivable. And my journey of learning to forgive the unforgivable started with the loss of my son. As I navigated through that, I thought I had overcome it. I thought I was in a good place of evaluating my ability to forgive this man. And then 7 years after the death of my son, I fell and broke my neck. And my break was at a place where it left me paralyzed from the chest down. And I started to realize that, man, life is not fair. Why is it that I'm now paralyzed from the chest down, and I've lost my son too? All in the area of the 50s in my life, from 52 to 59 is when this all started to take place. And it just caused me to think and just dwell on how unfair life was. And what compounded it the most was this feeling of being victimized. I became a victim of my circumstances. And in becoming a victim of my circumstances, I lost my purpose. I lost my compass, if you will, to navigate life in a powerful and passionate way. As a result of becoming victimized, I started to feel sorry for myself. I started to feel helpless. I started to feel hopeless. I started to question God. Why? Why this? Why me? Why now? I'm at the end of, I just finished a beautiful 25-year career in the fire service. 5 months after I retire and move to Nashville, Tennessee, to where I'm going to enjoy the rest of my retirement, I fall, and now I'm left paralyzed. So I had to learn how to navigate that in the hospital, learning how to walk again. They thought I would never walk. They thought I would never use my hands. But the power of the mindset that comes when you become aware of the circumstances of life is not what dictates your life. The challenges of life are nothing more than the weight room for the muscles. So when you can compare weightlifting in a gym to the actual emotional intelligence of creating the strength and the power of dealing with life circumstances, that all comes as a result of trauma, of trial, of challenges that you have to overcome. And so I started to mind shift again once I became paralyzed. And 2.5 months after I entered the hospital, I actually walked out of there. I walked out of the hospital with hope, with a new zeal for life. But then after walking out, for that next year, I was left by myself to think about the condition of my body. It wasn't improving much. I mean, I could navigate, I could take care of myself, and all those things were great. But at the same time, my mind was still, but you're not what you used to be. You're not the outgoing man that worked with his hands, that was able to help other people through their trauma and their trials as a firefighter. So in essence, I lost my identity, Elijah. And when I lost my identity, I lost my hope again. And so I had to go back into the awareness of what my brain was doing to me. We all have 3 brains in one, really. It's the thinking, doing, and the being brain. And my thoughts were perpetually on the negative. And so I kept thinking negatively about my condition. And in thinking negatively, I became and started doing things that were negative. I started feeling like I didn't belong. I started feeling like I was useless. I started feeling like I was hopeless. And as a result, my being became one of helplessness, one of hopelessness. And I needed to transition out of that. So the only way I could remind myself to do that is to just get involved with mindset applications on changing that. And I ran into this young man of 28, powerful speaker, transformational speaker named Nick Santanastasso. And Nick had no legs and one arm, and he was born that way. But yet his life was so inspirational that I thought, I need to find out what his key is to overcoming adversity. And anyway, he ended up helping me transition through that by asking me what it was that I was thinking about the most about myself. What did I ponder on? And my thoughts were one of being hopeless, one of being helpless. And so he asked me, do you think I'm hopeless? Or do you think I'm helpless? Do you think I'm pitied, to be pitied because I don't have the use of my body? And I said, absolutely not. And he says, you've put so much emphasis on your body and its mechanics that you have validated yourself based off of what your body can or can't do. And that caused me to think for a second and to ponder, what have I become that my circumstances have created this individual who was once very outgoing, very active, to now think that he was useless in the world? And it started me back on a mindset journey. And through that mindset journey, I discovered that my beliefs create thought. And that thought creates a choice. And that choice creates a behavior that then creates an experience that leads to an emotion. And that emotion provides the evidence to support our original belief system. So it produces a result. And the result I was seeing as a process of my thinking was that I believed that I was useless. And so every time that I would try to walk around the house, or every time I would try to pick something up, an object, and it would fall out of my hands because my hands weren't working right, it validated the belief system that I was useless. So I was looking at life through the lens of doubt, through the lens of fear, through the lens that perpetuated a negative thought cycle over and over and over again. So my thoughts would create this experience of being useless that would then validate the belief. And the longer I cycled in this, the more subconsciously or on autopilot, my beliefs started to respond. And so as a result of that negative input, I became a useless individual in my mind. And that's where the power change shifted. After speaking with Nick, I realized, we are called to be faithful servants. We are called to have faith. And when we have faith, we don't look at life through the lens of doubt anymore. We look through the lens of anticipation. What our Creator is doing in us to create a purpose, not only for our lives, but a purpose that will be a blessing in the lives of others. So as I started to develop my faith again and looking at it through the adventurous anticipation of what life could be, my entire mind shifted from one of looking at life through the lens of fear to looking at life through the lens of love. And when I started looking at it through the lens of love, God came down and he touched me again and said, your life has a purpose to bring gifts and meaning to those who struggle, if you're willing to accept it. And at that point, I said, Elijah, I want that. I want the life that brings purpose to not only me, but brings a blessing and a gift to all those who are also struggling with their own emotional well-being that drives them into the realm of being victimized by circumstances rather than be victorious over them.
Oh man, thank you, Lord. I just didn't want you to stop talking because since you started talking, oh man, I've been picking some amazing, insightful words. I tell you. The breakdown of the mind that you mentioned, that part where you said we have three brains in one: thinking, being, and doing, right?
Thinking, doing, and being.
Doing and
Yes.
being, yeah. That part struck me and that part where you mentioned that you sought after Nick, and after the conversation now, there was a shift in your mind. And that's really inspiring and educating. You know, Many people do not, I don't know how to put it now. It's just so complicated because when they find themselves stuck in a particular situation, they go after the wrong kinds of people for advice based on
Mm-hmm.
probably how they view life or how they view the circumstances they were in. But I think the solution to every problem is knowledge, quality information, just as the one you got,
Yes.
and it affected your mind positively. Okay, and you see, Rick, you've answered literally most of my questions except one. Okay, so what steps can people take to turn their struggles into opportunities for renewed purpose and passion? You get that?
The first step is awareness. You have to become aware of your thought patterns and your belief systems. We have become so accustomed to running on autopilot through life based off of our circumstances that validate that our beliefs are right. And so when we start to operate on autopilot, we don't always evaluate the results as though they're present to us. The results come in our emotional well-being, how we feel about things. That is the being part of that brain. And so when you become aware of that and you start to see that the circumstances are creating negative thought patterns and belief systems and they're being validated, then once you become aware of that, you can shift to gear two, which is to have the intention to change that paradigm. And so shifting that paradigm with intention means that you're no longer going to view life through the lens of fear and doubt, negative energy. You're going to start viewing life through the lens of faith and anticipation, through the lens of love. And through that, you're going to have a much more powerful impact on the lives of those around you. You're not going to be creating negativity. You're going to be creating a positive environment first for yourself. And then as a result, others will seek that out and you can provide a gift and a blessing for them when they're in their darkest days. And then the third thing is just that mind shift, having the determination that I'm going to actually shift gears and become a different person by the way I think and change those patterns that have become subconscious, actually, that have been programmed into us for the first 7 or 8 years of our lives. We are given feedback into our psyche from the generation before us, that came from the generation before them, that lead back to the generations before them. And so we've got this lineage of thought patterns and belief systems handed to us and programmed into us in that first 7 or 8 years of our lives. And so because they become so unconscious, we're not aware of them. But the minute we become aware of them, we can then start the process to navigate out of them with faith, with hope, and with love. And as we start to transition those three, I call it the AIM process. You first become aware of them, then you, with intention, you start to change them, and then finally, you start to make the shift. And the shift comes with practice. It comes with intentional action over and over to where it becomes your new programming. And the way you evaluate it, whether you're on the right track or not, is by just simply looking at the outcome of your life, looking at the results of your life. If your life is in a place where you feel helpless and hopeless, you feel like you don't matter, you feel like life is happening to you rather than for you, then you'll start to drive your life in that direction. And if you're not happy with that outcome, there's nobody to blame but yourself. And I don't mean that in a negative sense. I mean that in a sense of awareness. Once you're aware of that, that's when you can make change happen. If you stumble through a room in darkness because you have no light, then when you hit something, you blame whatever that is because you couldn't see it. You're not aware of it. But once your life becomes open to the light, and you can start to see that the behaviors you have are either empowering or limiting, you get to make a decision. And that's the key to overcoming life's hurdles, is making a decision. Most of us have just become so accustomed to not making a decision to change because we feel so comfortable in being validated as a victim and having people feel pity for us or feel sorry for us or have empathy for us. And so we get our value from them by being pitied or by being victimized. And the story of Jesus, in my mind, is one of empowerment. It's one of overcoming. It's one of resurrecting, if you will, not in the physical sense, so to speak, but in the mental sense. We all have a resurrection in our life, from the old self to the new self, from darkness into light. And when we can transition through our emotional intelligence and become aware of where we are, we can then make the decision to change the course. And then through that decision, we have intention to act a different way. And over time, that new way of acting becomes our new programming. And I think that's the entire premise behind my walk with the Lord. Is I was walking in fear. I was blind and I couldn't see. I was in doubt. I was a victim of my circumstances. And that mindset had to be buried. And it had to rise up out of the ashes through that experience, through that trauma, through that weightlifting room for the mind, through those challenges, to become one that is based in faith, and the faith to overcome, and the faith to persevere, and the faith to have resilience, and the faith that anticipates the outcome is going to be for His glory, for His purpose, so that we can shine light into the darkness and into the hearts of those who are hurting and suffering.
Oh, thank you, Lord. That's amazing. That's a great one. I love it. Okay, Rick. So yeah. So that's gonna be okay. Before we go, in order to put this to an end, to close it, what would you like to leave the audience with? You said a lot of amazing stuff, like a final thought now. And to those ones who would like to reach out to you, learn more about what you do, maybe you said some things that resonated with them and they'd love to learn more. How can that be possible?
What I'd like to leave with your audience is this. We get to choose how we interpret life. We can let life happen to us and become a victim of it. And the result is going to be victim mentality, which is going to be based in fear, which is going to be stagnant. It's going to cause us not to want to grow. It's going to cause us to just be comfortable and sit where we stand. Now, the other option is this. We could have a life that happens for us. The circumstances of life are happening for us, for our learning, for our feedback, so that we can grow. And as we grow and we overcome life's challenges, we become strong men in our ability to handle any situation. And when we can handle any situation that comes at our way, we become victorious over any circumstance. So we can have a life of victorious endeavors over any challenge, over any situation, if we choose to have this decision. Life is not happening to me, it's happening for me, for my betterment, so that I can be a light into the darkness where evil can sometimes take hold of us. And it causes us to go in directions we don't like, we don't want. So if you have an audience or you have listeners out there that are struggling in that fear-based mentality of being victimized by their circumstances, I offer hope. I offer transformation. I offer a beacon of light in the darkness to help you navigate out of that.
Beautiful. I love that. Okay, so if anyone wants to reach out to you, how can that be possible?
Right now, the best way to get a hold of me is just through email. I'm in the process of putting together some funnels to be able to
Okay.
get people connected to me. But right now, my email is rkconsulting 292 at gmail.com. So rkconsulting 292 at gmail.com. I can also be found on Facebook and Instagram. And I believe you might have those links with
Yeah.
this podcast. And click in, follow me, like my content, and let's create a community where we can all navigate life together and empower one another with our own stories.
Yeah, that's right. So that's gonna be the end of the show. Thank you for coming and thank you for sharing this, amazing story, inspiring story, and powerful words. It means a
Thank you.
whole lot. Thank you, Rick.
Appreciate it, Elisha.